Welcome to chapters 13 and 14 of Turning Pro, a book club in fsbb.io. Let's jump right in. Beautiful losers. Have you ever noticed that addicts are often extremely interesting people? Addiction itself is excruciatingly boring. It's boring because it's predictable. The lies, the evasions, the transparent self-justifications and self-exonerations. But the addict himself is often a colorful and fascinating person. If he has been a substance abuser for any length of time, the story often reads like a novel, packed with drama, conflict, and intrigue. If the addict's drug of choice is alcohol, the narrative is frequently one of job loss, domestic abuse, divorce, abandonment of children, and bankruptcy. If Class 1 narcotics are the culprit, the tale often includes troubles with the law, crime, prison time, violence, and even death. Of course, you and I can be addicted to any number of things, to love, to sex, to worship of our children or our parents, to dominance, or to submission. We can even be addicted to ourselves. Such individuals can be absolutely fascinating at the same time that they're boring as hell. What then is the connection between addiction and resistance? Well, let's get into it in Chapter 14, Art and Addiction. For the past several years, I've written weekly posts on my website called Writing Wednesdays. Far and away, the most popular entries in that space have been my, quote, Artist and Addict series. One of the points that these posts make is that we're not that big of a difference between an artist and an addict. Many artists are addicts and vice versa. Many are artists in one breath and addicts in another. So, what's the difference? The addict is an amateur. The artist is a professional. Both addict and artist are dealing with the same material, which is the pain of being human and the struggle against self-sabotage. But the addict amateur and the artist professional deal with these elements in fundamentally different ways. When I say addiction, by the way, I am not only referring to the serious clinical maladies of alcoholism, drug dependence, domestic abuse, and so forth. Web surfers count too. So do compulsive texting, sexting, twittering, and Facebooking. The whole idea is distractions, displacement activities. When we're living as amateurs, we're running away from our calling, meaning our work, our destiny, the obligation to become the truest and highest forms of ourselves. Addiction becomes a surrogate for our calling. We enact the addiction instead of embracing the calling. Why? Because to follow the calling requires work. It's hard. It hurts. It demands entering the pain zone of effort, risk, and exposure. So we take the amateur route instead. Instead of composing our symphony, we create a shadow symphony, of which we ourselves are the orchestra, the conductor, the composer, and the audience. Our life becomes a shadow drama, a shadow startup company, a shadow philanthropic venture. Have you ever been to New Orleans? In Tennessee Williams-esque southern cities like Savannah and Charleston, you find characters. These colorful old ladies with 39 cats and purple-haired dude who has turned his apartment into a shrine to James Dean. In the South, you can get away with that stuff. It's kind of cool. The shadow enactment has been elevated to such a level that it becomes folklore, and sometimes even art. My life used to be a shadow novel. It had plot, characters, sex scenes, action scenes. It had mood, atmosphere, texture. It was scary. It was weird. It was exciting. I had friends who were living in shadow movies, or creating shadow art, or initiating shadow industries. These were our addictions, and we worked for them for all that they were worth. There was only one problem. None of us was writing the real novel, or painting a real painting, or starting a real business. We were amateurs living in the past or dreaming of the future, while failing utterly to do the work necessary to progress in the present. You see, when you turn pro, your life gets very simple. The Zen monk, the artist, the entrepreneur often lead lives so plain that they're practically invisible. Miyamoto Musashi's dojo was smaller than my living room. Things become superfluous for him. In the end, he didn't even own a sword. The amateur is an egotist. He takes the material of his personal pain and uses it to draw attention to himself. He creates a life, a character, a personality. The artist and the professional, on the other hand, have turned the corner in their minds. They've succeeded in stepping back from themselves. They have grown so bored with themselves and so sick of their petty bullshit that they can manipulate those elements the way a hazmat technician handles weapon-grade plutonium. They manipulate them for the good of others. What were once the shadow symphonies become real symphonies. The color and drama that were once outside now move inside. Turning pro is an act of self-abnegation. Not self with a capital S, but with a little s, self. Ego, distraction, displacement, addiction. When we turn pro, the energy that was once went into the shadow novel goes into the real novel. What we once thought was real, the world, including its epicenter, ourselves, turns out only to be a shadow. And what seemed to be only a dream becomes now the reality of our lives. Man, I love this last chapter right here, this chapter number 14, Art and Addiction. I'm going to be honest with you. The amateur is an egotist. He takes the material of his personal pain and uses it to draw attention to himself. He creates a life, a character, a personality. This has often been the thought that I've had of most artists out there, the egotistical artists who are talking about their pain and their suffering. Yes, I understand. Art is an outlet for your pain, your suffering, and your trauma. Totally get it. But at the end of the day, many of these artists aren't actually the perfect example of what artistry could be. You still see them. You still see their visage. You still see their ego. You still see their attitude, their pride, their haughtiness. They're still part of the equation. And so the art, at the end of the day, as much as they want to fake it, it's still all about them. It's all about their ego. They're still an amateur at the end of the day. And so we want to go pro. We want to strip ourselves of all of the things that slow us down, of all of the constraints, of all of the wastes of time, of all of the things that at the end of the day give us very little value. What we need to do is focus ourselves. So, I got 4 questions for you today in chapters 13 and 14, Art and Addiction. Number 1. What are your distractions? Write them down. Number 2, what are your time bandits? Time bandits I consider things that you enjoy doing but end up wasting time. Number 3, when do you enact the addiction instead of embracing the calling? You know you should have done the work. Instead, you decided to play video games, something like this. And number 4, what must you let go of now to begin your journey now? I'm excited to see what your responses are, and I'll see you guys in go.fsbb.io community. See you guys there.